Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done a check-in. So I've got a bunch of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Before we get into all of my shenanigans over the last 2 weeks, I wanted to do a couple of housekeeping notes. So the first thing is in the next couple of weeks, so on May 29 and May 30, there is going to be a really great speaking event. It's an online webinar with probably about, I'm going to say 10 to 12 guest speakers, speaking on topics, I guess, related to nutrition and exercise science. And it's with the group called Natural Peaking. So we actually had a tour in Spain, I think 2 years ago. I have kept connections with those guys, and I know for anybody there that is interested in learning more about the science of nutrition, you will get so much out of this 2-day event. So go and check out their Instagram page. I'll throw that up here for you so that you can have a look. I think it's going to be a great weekend of education, jam-packed info. That's that. I'm going to be speaking specifically on the topic of metabolic adaptation. I'll be looking at, I guess, the concept of reverse dieting and probably throw in a few nuance issues and things that I've just seen anecdotally working with clients and that I have experienced myself going through that process. Hopefully give you guys some good takeaway points and like practical things that you can do to kind of help recover your endogenous metabolic rate. So the other thing that I wanted to quickly talk about was our 1-year anniversary for Carbon Diet Coach. So obviously this particular series is really about just showing you firsthand how our nutrition coaching app works, but also I guess just to see how I kind of handle different situations and really try to implement the concept of flexible dieting, but also show you that, you know, it's okay if you don't have perfect check-ins every week, and that maybe some of the approaches to nutrition like intuitive eating or mindful eating can actually still work somewhat closely with flexible dieting. So we have just announced our winners for our Big Carbon Transformation Challenge. So in order to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, we wanted to be able to give back to you guys and say a huge thank you. So I believe we actually ended up giving out 15 lifetime subscriptions. Originally, we were going to have 10, and then just looking over some of the entries, I think there were probably 15 alone fat loss entrants that could have won easily. So we ended up just giving away more so that we still had 5 winners from the reverse diet and muscle building category as well. So if you would like to check out who our winners are, you can go over and have a look at the Carbon Diet Coach Instagram page and see who took away our lifetime coaching subscriptions. So massive congratulations to all the folks that put in their entries. Huge congratulations. And we are very excited to have you on board for a lifetime of carbon. Okay, so this weekend was Mother's Day. We actually went away with some friends of ours to the beach, which is lovely. We actually didn't have the kids this Mother's Day. They are with their mama. Sadly, didn't get to spend any time with the kids, but we did have a wonderful weekend. So we went to the beach, had 2 nights in a beautiful resort in Clearwater here in Florida. So if anybody is contemplating doing maybe a trip to Florida and wants a nice beach location, I would highly recommend the hotel that we stayed in. It was called the Sand Pearl. It is stunning. The views are just incredible. And the restaurant there, like, for someone that really enjoys food, it was probably one of the better restaurants that I've eaten at when it comes to like staying in a hotel and not feeling like you need to leave at all. So we had a really nice weekend and I definitely needed a bit of a break. I feel like the last few months have just been incredibly stressful, and Lane and I really don't get a huge amount of time to spend together. So yeah, that was definitely something that we definitely needed. Something that I wanted to talk about before I jump into my check-in for this last week was the idea that intuitive eating or mindful eating can be a dieting strategy or a strategy that can help in the aid of fat loss. So I'll first talk about that, and I also wanted to discuss, can they coexist with something like flexible dieting? First off, I think intuitive eating or mindful eating, just very briefly, I won't go into all of the details because it's probably a video on its own, but that really is kind of the idea that you are honoring your internal hunger cues and your appetite signals to kind of eat. There's no expectations about the types of foods that you're eating. You're really just, if you're craving this, and you're hungry, like you truly honor that and give yourself unconditional permission to eat. We're thinking about eating with intention, eating mindfully, and trying not to eat out of a result perhaps of a certain emotion. A lot of people tend to eat when they are feeling sad or if they're stressed. And some people eat if they are feeling, frustrated. There's a lot of different reasons why we choose to eat. And there's also a lot of sociological factors that play into, why we might eat and we're not in fact hungry. That's something that I have actually used as a nutrition strategy kind of coming out of my life as a competitor. You guys have heard me talk about quite a bit, but I still do track macros. So I think there's kind of a few questions that have been asked about, can they really work together and are they appropriate strategies for helping you to maintain your weight? And the answer is, to that question, not really. These are approaches that are kind of very much weight neutral. There shouldn't be any expectation that when you start intuitively eating or mindfully eating that there's going to be some kind of change to your food choices or a change to your body composition for that matter. That's the first thing that I really wanted to point out. Like, these aren't nutrition approaches that are going to lead to successful weight loss outcomes. It's really about helping people improve their psychological health and their relationship with food. Sorry, I just moved the camera around because I noticed that we've got big highlight windows up here and it's just like blasting in my face and you don't want to see that. Anyways, back to intuitive eating and mindful eating. I think that's quite a common misconception that this is automatically going to cause changes in your body composition, and it's certainly not the intention. It really is about focusing on overcoming a poor relationship with food, and I guess the underlying issue is often to do with our body image or self-image and how we kind of feel about ourselves. When we're trying to blend something like that with flexible dieting, it's kind of like, to me, they can coexist. I've really tried to apply some of the principles behind that while still following some kind of macro target. And I have absolutely found that my relationship with food has improved. I've also kind of learned to let go of that perfectionist mindset. If I previously, would track my macros, I really had to keep a tight control on them every single day. There was very limited flexibility. And, if I made a mistake, that was it. And how that would impact me on an emotional level was quite significant. I think, one of the things that it's helped me improve is just kind of letting go of some of the stress around flexible dieting, but more to the point, it's enabled me to be comfortable in a bigger state of flux or weight fluctuation. My final answer on this is yes, I do think that they can coexist. And if we just look at kind of what flexible dieting is, a lot of that is potentially meal planning. And those two factors, you can still practice those if you are, trying to eat mindfully or eat intuitively. Really, meal planning is just choosing foods perhaps at the beginning of the week that you hopefully enjoy to save you time, hopefully to save you money, and just to lower the overall stress about kind of choosing foods when you're feeling really, busy and rushed. If we look at what meal prepping actually is, it's really just preparing food, probably in bulk. Again, potentially to save you time, potentially to save you money, and just reduce the amount of stress can often come with having a busy schedule and just having to rush to make a decision around your food. So I do think that those practices can still be incorporated. It's just, looking more closely at some of the other existing beliefs that you might have. So a couple of things that I wrote down was flexibility. If you're going to practice, flexible dieting and you're trying to repair or work on the psychological aspects of health and how you perceive food, are you giving yourself permission to be flexible? So if you've done some meal planning and you've prepared meals, or maybe you've entered it into your food tracking device at some point during the day, can you still be flexible about that? Or is there a really strong, feeling or association with, I have to do this? Like there's no option to change. I have to be sticking to this rigid, structured plan. If that's the case, I think that's where we need to kind of reassess and go, okay, do I need to change how I'm implementing this kind of flexible dieting approach? Do I need to give myself increased flexibility and be less rigid around it? Other things to consider is like when you're doing your meal planning or meal prepping is, am I making sure that I'm giving myself sufficient amount of calories? Am I eating enough to make sure that I can sustain all of the activities that I'm going to be doing throughout the day? Do I have enough energy to make sure that if I'm training, I've got plenty of energy there and it's not restrictive in nature? And then the other couple are satisfaction. So are you enjoying the foods that you are preparing and planning? Or are these kind of foods that you're eating with the understanding that there's going to be some kind of benefit to consuming that specific food, even though you do not enjoy it? So again, looking at the overall satisfaction of the foods that you're preparing, like that's a big one for me. Even though I do a lot of meal prep, I really enjoy the foods that I prepare and it just feels easy. The next one is stress. For a lot of people, meal planning and meal prep is actually a lot more stressful. So again, I think there's a lot of individuality that kind of comes into this. So flexible dieting has been a game changer for me and probably for millions of people. However, it's not necessarily going to be the best approach for everybody. I completely understand that. So again, thinking about your individual personality and whether that's the right dieting approach for you. And then the last one is food variety. So when you are incorporating some kind of meal planning or meal prep and you're flexible dieting, have you got enough food variety? We know that flexible dieting actually seems to be superior compared to, say, a rigid or a structured meal plan because it is flexible. Like you get to choose more of the foods that you like. But again, if there's too much rigidity around your meal planning and meal prepping, then we start to kind of get into the habit of just eating the same foods over and over again. And now your micronutrient diversity is actually going down. So just being mindful of those things. If you know that some of those things are not being practiced, even though you're applying the principles of flexible dieting, they might be some areas that you can consider working on to help you, particularly if you're somebody that is struggling with your relationship with food. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, because I know that's been a question that's asked quite often, especially since my check-ins are often non-compliant or I will overeat my macros intentionally, but that's truly because I'm trying to incorporate a little bit more of that intuitive eating and mindfulness to help me kind of recover from some of those negative diet culture, contest prep behaviors around food. Let's go and have a look at my check-in for this week. Okay, so I'm going to hop in and quickly pull up my calories, my averages for the last couple of days. So we go to my calorie intake. You can see there from Monday through to Sunday, which is my 7-day period. My average intake was 1942. So if I hadn't have had such a high calorie day yesterday, which was Sunday on Mother's Day, I think I probably would have been compliant. But again, in that moment, like previously, if I was a competitor and I was being really like rigid about my nutrition, I would not have made that decision. But I think for me, I was like, okay, we're here with friends. I don't get to see them very often. I'm really enjoying this moment. I'd like to be able to share this nice dessert with my friends. And I'd like to be able to have a drink with them out on the boat today rather than just sitting there and having a water or something. So like I made that intentional decision to go, you know what, I'm going to have more calories today. I feel fine. I don't feel like I'm full. I'm not forcing food down. This just feels right. So I had quite a few calories yesterday. You can see there 2771. For the rest of the week, I was pretty on track with my actual targets. So just for those of you who don't know, I'll quickly pop back in and I'll go over to my macro target. So you can see there my current calorie targets are 1732, and that they are my maintenance calories. I'm targeting 149 protein, 176 carb, and 48 fat. So if we go over to calories, I just want to pull up what my monthly averages have been. Alrighty guys, there is so much light in my house. If we go to the month view, you can actually see here on the screen that my average calorie intake has actually been 21-25. So it's significantly higher than what my targeted maintenance calories are. So I think what that would suggest is that my true maintenance calories, if I wanted to maintain the weight that I'm currently at, is probably a little bit higher than what I'm targeting, because every time I do consistently hit my targets, you can kind of see my weight starting to creep down, but I'm never on it long enough for my weight to keep dropping. I always end up having a couple of days that are quite a bit higher in calories, like I did yesterday. So then my weight kind of comes back up. So that's always really interesting to have a look at. We'll go over and have a look now at my protein intake. For this last week, my average protein intake was right on 150 grams. So that is a little bit, 1 gram above what my actual targets were, but that is definitely insignificant. So you can see there, yesterday was the highest day at 181, but throughout the week, pretty consistent around that 150 mark. If we go to my carbohydrate intake for this last 7-day period, 215 grams was my average, but again, like yesterday, Mother's Day, I had 325 grams, so quite a bit higher than what I would normally consume. Overall, my average was 215. And then fats, so from Monday through Sunday, my average fat intake was 54. So again, there's a little bit more flux with my carbohydrate and fats. And again, that's totally okay. Like, I'm not trying to keep my weight perfectly at one mark. I'm totally open to there being more fluctuation. But again, I think for those of you that are following a structured fat loss plan right now, there's certainly something to be said for keeping your carbohydrates and fats within close range of those targets, just due to the fact that, when we're eating more carbohydrates as a percentage of our remaining calories, there's going to be more glycogen stored, there's going to be more water. I would say if you are trying to lose or actively pursue fat loss right now, try to be consistent with those numbers when possible, when it makes the most amount of sense. My weight this past week, I've only taken it a few times, so you can see that my average is 68.3. So I'm still within my allowable range, but that's also knowing I've eaten considerably more calories. So you can see this morning when I weighed in, I was at 69.2, 67.9, 68, and 67.9. Not too bad considering. So we'll go and actually check in with the coach. I'm going to check in a day earlier. I usually check in on a Tuesday. So you can see there, was I compliant to my calories? No. So I'm just going to go ahead and put no. Current weight this morning was 69.2. I did have my menstrual cycle actually this week, which is annoying. It kind of came unexpectedly. Does everything look okay? Complete check-in. And what do you know? My macros are going to be held steady. So that's kind of where I'm at for this week. Again, I will try my best to follow those targets and see what happens. I'm etching ever so close to wanting to do a reverse, but at the same time, I have so many friends and clients that are all competing. It's very tempting to go back into a fat loss phase, just to have a intentional goal. I know that it's been difficult to not have a goal and not be like, oh, I'm competing for this, or I've got at least a powerlifting meet or something. So I'm kind of getting a little bit I can tell that I'm getting itchy feet, but at the same time, I know that I probably need to spend a bit more time away from contest prep before I consider doing that again. But it's an interesting dilemma, because I know that I'd like to have a goal, but I'm not sure what at the moment. I don't think I want to do powerlifting again, just because it's so taxing on your body. I'd like to do fat loss, but I also know that's very taxing mentally. So I'm like, I don't know where I'm at with this at the moment. So yeah, I'll have to have a think about what I might do. But for now, I'm just going to keep plugging away at work and all of our business stuff. So anyways, Sorry for all the moving around today, guys. I definitely felt a bit distracted doing today's update because I could just see this blaring light in my face. But anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If you've got any questions about anything, please leave me a message and I will see you at my next check-in.